I'm Jeff Hunt. He's Bill Thorpe. Is that money leaving the state? Yes, it is. That is money leaving the state. The economic impact of Palantir's departure from Denver. Our friends over at the Common Sense Institute. Nobody does it better. Just the facts, ma'am, type of organization. They're not partisan. They're not trying to win elections. They're just trying to understand how policy decisions affect our state. And they get down into the facts. We're going to talk with Kelly Caufield, their executive director, on their latest report, the economic impact of Palantir's departure from Denver. It is shocking. It is heartbreaking. And when you get into what we talked about yesterday about the data center moratorium going on in the city of Denver now, we're governed right now by activists, not business people, not developers, not people who build things, not the Donald Trump type stuff, activists, people who are first and foremost about trying to win political points, like mask mandates or the removal of mask mandate, or a mandate to remove masks on ICE agents, right? They're going to pass that. They're going to get rid of those flock cameras. But when it comes to building and developing and making Denver a better place, well, we're going to put moratoriums on data development centers because of climate concerns, all that stuff. Folks, that's what the Denver City Council is made up of. And one of the economic impacts that's going to happen in the state is Palantir left Colorado's biggest public company, gone, heading to Florida, because they got tired of both the politics of the city and of Denver and the state of Colorado and of the AI restrictions that are coming down. We are not building our communities for success. Big companies are leaving. What's going to be the economic impact? We'll get into all this and more. Now it's time for the news.
Blake Olson, news and comment.
Good Thursday morning, 44 and sunny out there in Denver, 45 in the Springs. Expecting highs in the lower 60s today. News sponsored by Pastor Camp Heating and Air Conditioning. For a new home heating and cooling system, contact your Lennox dealer, Pastor Camp Heating and Air Conditioning at pastorcamp.com. Conditions apply. See dealer for details. Our top story, another large grass fire in Logan County forced firefighters to evacuate the small town of Padrone last night. They were ordered to leave quickly just after noon Wednesday, I should say yesterday. A few hours later, Logan County officials posted more evacuations for a larger area that included the town of Iliff in northeast Colorado. Sterling firefighters say they managed to contain fire to about 4,000 acres and get it contained last night without it burning any buildings or hurting the livestock in the area.
Kind of shocked it happened so quickly. My kid goes to school there, so he was shut down, locked down, so it was pretty scary.
5 people were injured after the grass fire that broke out north of Pinnacle High School in Thornton on Wednesday. It caused road closures in the area, including plenty of stops on I-25. 4 of the 5 injured were firefighters. Former acting DEA Administrator Derek Maltz on with Jeff and Bill last hour. During the first Trump administration, he pushed for the cartels to be designated as terrorists, and now they are.
And not only did he label them as terrorists, but he actually backed up his words with action. We've never had in the history of America where you had kinetic strikes against these drug boats. We've never seen this level of cooperation with the Mexican government. We have now had 92 high-level operatives removed from Mexico. And
the cartels Wait a minute. Where am I? Oh, here we go. Great way to wake up. Hearing from Maltz. Let's see. He'll get it going. When you talk about DEA, so great guest, great interview. Secretary of State Marco Rubio says the U.S. is investigating after the Cuban Coast Guard opened fire on a Florida-registered speedboat, killing 4 people and injuring 6 others.
The majority of the information we still possess is what Cuban authorities are providing both the public and the U.S. government. We have our embassy on the ground in Havana working this as we speak, asking for access to the people that were on those vessels, if they were American citizens or permanent residents.
The Cuban embassy in the U.S.
This is another
wacky
one, brother, where I'm just like, why do you put yourself in dumb situations? Like, we don't know all the details on this, but it kind of reminds me of when the people are going to interrupt ICE operations. Mm-hmm. I'm like, driving a boat to Cuba off the coast.
Yep.
Not putting yourself in a good situation.
No,
just saying. Absolutely.
That's desperation right there. It happens a lot. It happens a lot. And when you're living in those conditions, you never know what you will do. They claim those aboard were trying to infiltrate Cuba for terrorist purposes. However, there are some reports that the incident involved a U.S. civilian boat that was part of a flotilla to get family members out of the communist nation, and I completely understand that. A Douglas County judge sentenced 25-year-old Keon Golgoon to 60 days in supervised probation for 5 years. Golgoon was convicted in November for the violent assault of the mother of his child at the victim's home in August of 2024. The jury found Golgoon guilty of second-degree and third-degree assault as well as child abuse. The jury also determined the crimes constituted acts of domestic violence. The U.S. and Iran are holding another round of indirect nuclear talks today in Geneva. They are seen as last-ditch efforts.
U.S. negotiators remain hopeful a deal could be agreed, but if not, then Washington may resort to a military strike on Iran from one of the many naval and air force assets it's been assembling in the region in recent weeks.
Wednesday, the DJT administration announced new sanctions against Iran, targeting individuals, companies, and ships the U.S. says are involved in illicit oil sales, as well as Iran's missile program. Slick Willie and Hillary scheduled to appear for a high-profile deposition and depositions in the House to answer questions about their ties to Epstein and everything just horrific surrounding that satanic creature and them. Hillary will be deposed today, followed by the former president on Friday. They say they're being selectively prosecuted by Republicans on the committee. The city of Fountain is developing its first transportation safety action plan to reduce fatal and serious injury crashes. Officials say Highway 16 alone saw more than 100 injuries between 2020 and 2024, and 13 high crash locations have been identified. The plan will be presented to City Council on March 17th and could help secure future grant funding for road improvements. Avs back at it. They beat the Mammoth in Salt Lake City last night. They're 38-9-9. The Nuggets run past the Celtics in a big win, 103-84 last night in Lodo, and the CU Buffs over Kansas State in college basketball. 45 in the Springs, 44 in Denver. That's the latest. I'm Blake Olson. More of the Jeff and Bill Show ahead on News Talk 710, KNUS in Denver, and now on AM 1460 and FM 101.1 The Answer in Colorado Springs. This is where you hear both sides. We are the Jeff and Bill Show.
Very mild, but also very windy conditions along the I-25 corridor today from Denver to Monument Hill down into Colorado Springs and all the way down into Pueblo. We're going to be looking at really border to border, New Mexico to the Wyoming border, strong winds along I-25 as we have powerful jet stream winds streaking from the Pacific into the Rockies. Now, this has been productive overnight. The higher mountains in northern Colorado saw good snow and will see good snow through tonight. That'll help out the snowpack, but snow levels are going to be quite high due to the very mild temperatures in the 60s today. 50s and 60s tomorrow, then well into the 60s for Friday and Saturday as temperatures are going to stay well above average into the weekend. Do be ready for strong gusty winds and mostly cloudy skies. There is a slight chance of a shower tonight as some of that moisture could come off the mountains. Meteorologist Don Day in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
$710 KNUS in Denver.
And on AM 1460, FM 101.1, The Answer in Colorado Springs.
All along the Front Range, this is the Jeff and Bill Show where you get both sides, and they're absolutely the very best when it comes to analyzing data, policy decisions, how that impacts our community. And they've got a new report out, the economic impacts of Palantir's departure from Denver. We all heard about this. Colorado's biggest public company announcing that it's moving from Colorado to Florida. Not a lot of details as to why. It has to do with probably the income tax issues as well as AI policies we have in this state, but it's going to make an impact. And they dove into the details. Joining us now to give us some insight is Kelly Caufield, Executive Director, Common Sense Institute. Good morning, Kelly. Thank you for joining the Jeff and Bill Show.
Yes, good morning.
So much. Thanks, Jeff and Bill. Appreciate it.
All right, give us the facts, ma'am. What's happening with Palantir's departure?
So our economists were really interested in this news that we just heard a few weeks ago, and I think the real question is this just a one-off, or is it the tip of the iceberg? When we dove into the data, we found that just in a modest analysis of looking at what would be the economic impact to the state of Colorado if those 87 employees that we found at the company's office in Denver, if they left. And we found that this would hit the Colorado economy with a GDP decline of $106 million, economic output decrease of $178 million, and the loss of 724 jobs, because it's not just the jobs inside the building, but suppliers, distributors, other entities that would be impacted by the loss of a lot of high-earning employees that Denver is now losing.
I mean, that's a big deal. And it has lots of consequences for our economy. We're talking with Kelly Caufield, Common Sense Institute of Colorado. She's their executive director. And you saw in the news on this, people celebrating, going, yes, we've got this company out. We disagreed with their politics. We disagreed with their contract with ICE, for instance. I went and looked at that, and the contract with ICE represented roughly about 1% of what the business did. So we forced out Colorado's largest public company, in some cases because of what they did with 1% of their business, this is going to have an impact. I wonder your thoughts on that.
You know, Jeff, what we looked at was what Palantir said in their investor filing, which you alluded to earlier. And that was they did cite Colorado's artificial intelligence law and regulations that were passed last year. They've been delayed by 6 months. They are scheduled to go into effect this June of this year, 2026. But they, I think, foreshadowed what happened here by saying this law, which was the first in the nation to heavily regulate artificial intelligence, which is clearly a big part of their business, was a reason for concern by their board and their investors. Common Sense Institute last year did an analysis of what was the economic impact of that law and set of artificial intelligence regulations. And just to remind people, this was Senate Bill 24-205. And the bill was the first consequential AI law to be passed in the United States. The goal of the bill was to protect Coloradans from discrimination that may happen when you are using artificial intelligence, and required a whole set of compliance and rules for deployers of AI and developers of AI. And we found widespread impacts of this law if it passed because of the compliance cost and a loss. We forecasted a loss to the AI tech sector. Exactly, Palantir is a great example. And we found that this would impact the economy by $5.5 billion in lost GDP if the AI law goes into effect.
Did you say 5.5 billion or million?
I did. I said 5.5 billion. And Jeff, that's just the impact to the technology sector, which is a super sector for the Colorado economy. It's one of our absolute strongest. I didn't even get to the impact to all the deployers, people in housing, education, because almost any company that uses AI would be impacted.
Wow. I mean, and this is what I guess breaks my heart, is that we are in the midst of this AI boom that's happening in America. It's kind of unique here, even compared to other countries. You have incredible opportunity. And I'm not saying that everything that AI does is amazing. We should embrace everything. But my goodness, when there's a gold rush, for instance, you wouldn't have Colorado if it wasn't for the gold and silver rushes that took place. So you end up with this amazing opportunity. And it seems like because of our policies, we're missing out. Can you explore some of that?
I think what is really represented by Palantir's departure is a much larger trend that Common Sense Institute and other business organizations have found, and that is a slippage in Colorado's free enterprise competitiveness with our business friendliness index. Each year, Common Sense Institute produces a free enterprise report where we can track our competitiveness relative to every other state. And I don't want to give away the punchline. This will be released in just the next few days, and we'd love to be back on. But what we have found each year is we're decreasing. We're not increasing. We are slowing down in terms of our economic competitiveness and our business friendliness as a state. We used to be in the top 10, and consistently across every index, we are trending downwards. Housing, crime, a budget that continues to show an explosive growth of public sector FTEs relative to private sector, which means regulations are increasing. A number of business groups have found similar results. So I do believe Palantir's exit is a much larger story of strain that Colorado businesses are feeling.
So smart in that analysis right there. That's Kelly Caufield, Common Sense Institute of Colorado, out with their latest report, The Economic Impacts of Palantir's Departure from Denver. You probably saw it on the news. I mean, what are we to do when it seems like our civic leaders are dancing on the graves of these tech companies that are leaving? And celebrating in this part because they didn't like what they did with 1% of their business. Now we have the largest public company of Colorado departing, and as you just mentioned, a lot of other aspects of this industry going, I don't think we want to be a part of what Colorado is going to do. What do we do with civic leadership that seems to almost celebrate this?
It won't surprise you, Jeff, that I still think data and facts matter, and I think everyone is feeling economic strain. Shouldn't say everyone. I think most Coloradans feel the affordability crunch and are struggling economically. When you see one of our most productive employers leaving the state, that's something that we take notice of. That impacts the restaurants close by, it impacts the hotels, it impacts the outdoor rec industries that many of these individuals, I'm sure, were enjoying and spending significant money on. We did model if Palantir's exit led to any domino effect of any other companies in the, again, they're a part of a super sector that we study. It's one of the biggest in Colorado. This is the professional, scientific, and technical services sector. We modeled that if there was the most conservative estimate possible, if there was a 0.1% decline in this super sector, that would yield more economic challenges, even more than what that initial analysis showed. We saw even a 0.1% decline in that industry would cause a loss of 1,400 jobs, decreased population, and a GDP loss of $200 million. The state and the city of Denver should be focused on policies that make people want to stay here, to live here, to thrive here, to do business here, and not to exit. The state is facing this negative net migration that's been well documented by Common Sense and other researchers. So we should be open for business, not closed to business, and I hope that the policymakers will focus on the data and facts.
That's Kelly Caufield, Executive Director for Common Sense Institute, joining Jeff and Bill, talking just about a newly released report about the economic impact of Palantir leaving our state. Could be a GDP decline of up to $106 million, economic output loss of $178 million, personal income loss of over $107 million. One of the things I want to explore with you, Kelly, is you just talked about affordability, that and you may or may not have an opinion on this, on why they chose to go to Miami. I understand no personal income tax, but if we're talking about affordability, everything else inside of Miami is more expensive. Cost of living is around 10% higher. Rent is between 30 to 40% higher. Groceries are 10%, 5 to 10%. Restaurant prices are about 30% higher. It is a loss for the purchasing power of anybody outside of those C-suites inside of Palantir based on affordability. So if Colorado has somewhat of an affordability crisis, why do they move to Miami, where literally everything is more expensive?
It's a great question, and I would truly just be speculating. We've talked a lot about this artificial intelligence law that Palantir cited in their filings with their investors, showing that they had concerns about that law. Again, Colorado, first in the country. I don't know why we needed to be the first in the country to try to heavily regulate something that's still being developed. But the other part that I would just wonder about is tax policy. You mentioned that we don't have evidence of this, but any business savvy CEO is going to look at tax structures. It's just a reality. And this fall, it's not set yet, but we know a graduated income tax proposal is floating itself through the ballot process, and that would fundamentally change the tax structure in Colorado. That would impact a lot of individuals, obviously, plus S-corps and other companies. So I do think when you're looking at states that have a more competitive tax edge, states like Florida are probably going to stand out and continue to stand out, especially if Colorado voters decide to fundamentally change the tax structure of this state.
Yeah, and that's what I find interesting in the discussion, Kelly Caufield, Executive Director for the Common Sense Institute, about Palantir moving. I can see the idea that, hey, our personal income taxes here in Colorado may change and vastly increase based on the economic strata that most of the people in Palantir will live in. But then they move to a state when everything else gets more expensive. So it's not as if they're against things being more expensive or more taxes, because Florida extracts other taxes in greater amounts in other ways. So it's not really, for me, I feel like it's wallpaper dressing by Palantir, saying we're so worried about the personal income tax structure, so let's go to a state that taxes everything else at a much higher rate. It's just, for me, it's a weird bromide. I'm not looking for an opinion from you on that one. I want to talk about the AI issue. I agree with you that it's rather weird for Colorado to rush out in front and be at the front of the bus as far as the people that want to regulate AI. But then when you see things like AI doing some, basically wanting to create AI child porn, I think there might be some reasons for it, but I'd share your concern. I don't think we should have been first. The question I've got about the concern on Colorado's AI law and why Palantir is moving, last year, Donald Trump issued 3 different executive orders governing AI. The most recent of which is the beginning of December, where he basically says the laws that Colorado passed and California, no go, stop that, and going after those. So the question I have for you is, if Donald Trump issued this executive order that should, in many ways, prevent the enactment and the enforcement of the Colorado law, why does Palantir move? Did they not know about it, or did they not trust that the administration could get that done? I'm curious about that as far as the executive order. And then about 4 weeks later, Palantir says, we're moving. The executive order should have solved that. What's your opinion?
We are still tracking the executive orders of the president and the federal government. But what we really focused on here for purposes of our analysis was just to show that technology is a super sector for the Colorado economy. This law and the delay and any changes associated with it need to be carefully crafted. And I know the federal policymakers, I know that our United States senators and congressional delegation have been very focused on this issue as well. They understand the stakes are high. Colorado ranks 3rd in the nation for tech sector concentration. It's clearly an important hub for innovation and economic growth. And it has a trickle-down effect. This is a key industry. It's been responsible for a lot of the boom of the state. Every job created in the tech sector supports an estimated 2.6 additional jobs across other sectors. Because they are working with so many contractors and so many other entities, it has broad rippling economic impacts. They tend to be higher paying jobs, so they are bolstering outdoor recreation, retail, restaurants, hotels. This is a key industry, and I would continue to urge both state policymakers following the actions of the Trump administration, federal policymakers, and state policymakers to look very closely at how this impacts not only the tech sector, which, as I mentioned, is our 3rd most important in the state, but also all the deployers of the technology, those in housing, education, financial services. Almost every industry is using AI, so it has to be very carefully constructed because of the wide-ranging economic impacts this law will have.
I think we're losing the industry. Bottom line, I think we're losing the tech industry. And I wanted to see if you had any comment on the announcements from the city of Denver that they're going to pause the construction of any new data centers in this city. What do you think?
Yes. It's a great question, Jeff. We will likely look into this issue a little bit. Last year, Common Sense did a rapid response on the PUC and how they were looking at different requests for additional energy capacity to really fuel the grid for all of the different data infrastructure needs. And we did find that when the PUC limits load capacity for Colorado and makes it more difficult for data centers to open up, not surprisingly, that would have an impact on the economy. So we found that when they cap new capacity, even at a 200 megawatts level, that would cost Colorado 17,000 jobs. So the stakes are high. Jeff, I don't envy the people who have to make those decisions, because I think it's also been well documented in other states. These are not always good jobs associated with the data center itself. There's strain on water. We already have escalating electricity costs in Colorado, and they're only going to get worse because of the greenhouse gas roadmap reduction goals set out by our governor and state legislature. So it's not an easy decision, but will certainly come at an economic cost if we continue to limit the ability to fuel data centers.
I agree entirely. That's Kelly Caufield. She's executive director with Common Sense Institute of Colorado. Go to commonsenseinstituteus.org. Check out their latest report, The Economic Impacts of Palantir's Departure from Denver. And what I so appreciate that Common Sense Institute does is that they help us understand that what's happening in our state, we don't get here just because of randomness. These challenges that we're facing are often downstream of policy decisions that were made last year, 2, 3, even a decade ago. What we deal with in our communities is the direct result of policy decisions made at the state capitol. They're looking at that impact, providing that research back to the policymakers. But I think the news I'm hearing from this report, from the fact that the data centers are getting shut down in Denver, is that we're prioritizing politics oftentimes ahead of what's best for the community, and we're going to pay for it. Bottom line, we're going to pay for it. Companies are leaving. That's what I'm seeing here. Well, Kelly Caufield, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for joining the Jeff and Bill Show.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Jeff.
Absolutely brilliant work coming from the Common Sense Institute. Go to commonsenseinstituteus.org as they're showcasing these decisions are not only impacting Palantir's exit, data centers, not building, it's going to impact everything else from education to housing to restaurants to the point of $107 million just on personal income loss. Economic output loss, $178 million. GDP loss, $106 million by this one company leaving. And the socialists out there dancing on the grave. That's the direction we have here in Colorado until we start changing the leadership and the policy decisions in the state. Well, feel free to join the conversation. Give us a call at 303-696-1971. Text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line at 720-819-5115, 7537. Text it in. Look, they ran out oil and gas. Why not tech?
Yeah, I am skeptical on Palantir's reasons for going. And because if the protests are them, it's 1% of their business, and people making it difficult to go in and out of the building, I guess.
They're gone.
They're
gone, though.
I know,
who cares what all the examples are? They're gone.
I know, but what I'm saying is the reasons they're saying, and everyone going, look, that I don't believe a lot of their reasons. I understand they can be gone for whatever reason they want, but we can critique their publicly stated reasons and how it doesn't seem to line up with reality, especially when you're going to Miami, which is more expensive based on cost of living. It's a weird idea to move.
Is that true that Florida in itself is going to be more expensive than Colorado?
Well, they're moving to Miami. So I did a comparison online, cost of living comparisons between Denver, Colorado, and Miami, Florida, based on there. And I've got a whole list of things where Miami is, almost to a T, more expensive there by about 5, 10 to 30%, depending on what you're doing. And that's just random domestic, goods and services.
But how about running a company, all the regulations, the attorneys you got to hire, the lobbyists you got to hire, all that stuff to be able to maintain your business in a state that's hostile to you?
Well, the issue is I understand the idea of the state being hostile, but according to Trump's executive order, all of that should have been washed clean if we think the executive order is going to have any teeth.
But you're going to have to go hire lawyers to fight this stuff.
Not necessarily. If Trump's fighting it, they don't have to.
100%.
Not if Trump.
Lobbyists?
Not if Trump gets his way. If Congress does what Trump wants, then just wash your hands of it. That's clean. That's why I have a little bit of skepticism in this. And also, we can't forget that Palantir has seen a 27% stock price drop from the beginning of the year, and they're down about 38% year over year. I say that because I own some. So I know what the stock price has been doing. It's down 38% year over year. It's dropped 27% since the beginning of the year. I still hold my shares. I think it's going to rebound for a variety of reasons, but their
because
stocks,
they left Colorado.
I'm not convinced that's it. I think there are other reasons for it. But think, they're down 27% just from the beginning of the year. That's significant. So I have questions about why exactly they're moving. I don't think what they're telling us publicly is actually the right story.
The issue is, it's not just Palantir. Palantir is a harbinger of a much larger issue that we have in the state, is that the tech industry is heading out. They're done with it. And look, you can pick it with each situation and go, well, this is the reason. Space Command, gone. Palantir, gone. Data centers, not being built.
But we didn't have control over Space Command.
Right. So like I said, you can come up with every other excuse. Oh, it's not ours.
It's not an excuse.
Ours.
That was a directive from the government.
Bill, you're doing what every Democrat in the state of Colorado does.
No,
yes,
I'm being
you are.
rational.
You're sitting here going, look, well, it's somebody else's fault they left. Oh, it's somebody. We are not
Jeff.
building a state where these businesses and industries want to be. Bottom line.
No, I don't think that Space Force doesn't want to be here. I don't think Space Command doesn't want to be here. That's not what we've heard from our lawmakers. That's not what we've heard from them. It was moved by the government. The rest of your critique can hold. But the Space Command thing is a federal government decision that is not based on the people there getting to make the decision. They don't get to choose. They're told where to go.
Something else. Always another reason. An excuse.
It's not another reason. Jeff,
this
that's not an excuse.
State is dying,
Jeff,
and you are looking at everybody else going, oh, it's somebody else's fault.
No, I'm
we
trying
are
to tell
not
the
building
truth.
a state for success, bottom line.
No, I'm trying to tell the truth on one single point. You are lumping all those other things in. I'm giving you credit for the rest of them being correct, but not that one because they don't have it. No, it's not.
Yes,
I'm just trying to be accurate.
This
we need to be
state
accurate
is
about
dying. Oil and gas is gone. Now tech's leaving. Space Command's gone. This state is dying, and it's always somebody else's fault because we don't have real leadership that's willing to build a state for success.
So when Joe Biden moved it here, that was real leadership that was building a state for success? When they moved Space Command here? Was Joe Biden building a state for success, and was he showing real leadership?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Well, I'm not sure that point at all.
Well, the argument that you just made was that because the state doesn't show real leadership or anything, that's why Space Command is moving. And so I asked if Joe Biden was showing that leadership and showing the growth of the state that you're looking for when he moved it here.
Why did Trump want Space Command to leave?
Oh, I think it was simply political. Doesn't like Colorado.
No, what was it? He said his reasons why.
What was
that
it?
the city of Colorado Springs couldn't hold the capacity to care for the troops anymore. The schools weren't good. The housing wasn't good. All this other stuff.
I know.
Now,
That Air Force Academy sucks.
You can say
that,
the
Air Force Academy is awful.
Oh, it's politics, all that. Again, the state's dying, and Democrats have no plan other than to dance on the graves. We'll continue. Feel free to join the conversation. 303-696-1971. Text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line, 720-819-5115. More of the Jeff and Bill Show to come. 710 KNUS in Denver.
And now on AM 1460, FM 101.1, The Answer in Colorado Springs. We are the Jeff and Bill Show. We'll be right back.
710 KNUS in Denver.
And now on AM 1460, FM 101.1, The Answer in Colorado Springs.
All along the Front Range, this is the Jeff and Bill Show where you get both sides. It's been a while since Bill and I got that heated in a debate. That was fun. We're talking about the economic impact of Palantir's departure from Denver. According to the Common Sense Institute, it's an employment loss of 724, population loss of 544, a GDP loss of $106 million, an economic output loss of $178 million, and a personal income loss of $107 million. It was Colorado's largest public company. It departed. Not super clear. It's made some statements. We had to go through the investment report, but regulatory environment of Colorado being one of it. And the debate that Billy and I went into was, is this where we are in Colorado? Is this the tech industry now heading out? The oil and gas industry has been forced out. And Colorado is run and managed by people that are more interested in winning political points and dancing on the graves of industries they don't like than actually building a state that's successful. And you see it in the Denver City Council now shutting down data center development because of climate concerns, their commitments. They want to strengthen our climate commitments, they say. In the midst of one of the biggest booms this country's seen around AI and all that development technology, and the state continuing to put their political preferences ahead of what's good for the economy in this state. Let's go to the phone line. Sarah in Castle Rock. Good morning, Sarah. You're on with Jeff and Bill.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for taking my call. I am with you 100%. Not only that, look at what they're promoting. So it's not just that they're kicking industry and businesses out. It's what else they're promoting. Between the drugs, we won't even talk about that, and the impact it has had. We were told it was for the children. We were going to fund schools with this new drug taxes. What's happening with the schools? Because I know in Douglas County, we've had taxes raised simply because all schools are falling apart. So they've done that. On top of that, I've heard they're trying to look for how to legalize adult industry or something like that. I was listening to a show, and they talked about that. So, yeah, we are declining in spades. And the saddest thing is that this is one of the states that has an amazing population. We have everything if we actually looked at industry and business. And I don't know if we're even going to keep the young people, because can they afford to live here? No.
Well, and Sarah, you've seen it in the reports where to your credit, to your point, that the growth that is happening in the state is almost entirely with the government. Government jobs, full-day daycare, those types of things. You're seeing a lot of growth there, but actual private sector industry growth, that's declining.
And that's not a long-term strategy that can work. And all I hear is, F ICE, F this, F that. That's not a strategy either. I'm just sick and tired of it. I'm an independent. I've voted Democrat. I've voted Republican. Now, Republicans also need to get their act together. They fell apart after the gubernatorial race way back when. We've lived here long enough for me to remember when they literally decided Dan Mays was not a good candidate for whatever reason. And that's when we went blue at the top. And so the Tom Tancredo group completely tanked us. That's where we started the decline. So I'm not going to, if we had not done that and really voted for fiscal conservatives and people who balance, it was a very balanced state for a long time, Colorado, where we'd have one blue senator, one red senator. People had reasonable decision-making skills. We've now just become, I don't even know what. I can't describe us.
We're a quintessential blue state where you have massive government growth, The private industry's heading out. All of our taxes are higher, and our services are worse. Sarah Castlerock, sure appreciate the call. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
We'll continue. Sarah's line open if you want to jump in, 303-696-1971. Text us on the Dan Caplis Law Text line at 720-819-5115. More of the Jeff and Bill Show to come, 710 KNUS in Denver.
And now on AM 1460, FM 101.1, The Answer in Colorado Springs. This is where you get to hear both sides. This is the Jeff and Bill Show.
.710 KNUS in Denver.
And on AM 1460, FM 101.1, The Answer in Colorado Springs.
All along the Front Range. This is the Jeff and Bill Show where you get both sides. We're talking the latest report from the Common Sense Institute, the economic impacts of Palantir's departure from Denver. And is this a harbinger of a bigger problem that tech is now leaving. Oil and gas got out of here. Tech's getting out of here. Is this because the state is just so unfriendly? Is that the regulatory environment so hostile that businesses are getting out? Great text message from 8422. People and corporations have figured this place out. Colorado has lost its luster because most of our tax money goes for nonsense and nothing of real substance ever gets accomplished. Plus, one of Colorado's only appeals, the mountains, are at times not even accessible because of bumper-to-bumper traffic on I-70 and 285 they've been totally neglected, not kept up with the increased volume of traffic. People don't want to sit in traffic for 5 hours to go 2 hours away from their homes. It is amazing how we don't really travel to the mountains much anymore in light of that, you know. Oh, good point, 8422.
Yeah, but didn't I think the executive from Palantir just bought some sort of retreat in the mountains, either Vail or Aspen. So I don't think he's worried about the traffic. I think
he takes a helicopter, man.
Yeah. So
He's
that
fly
so
right
traffic
over that.
and what's going on I-70 that doesn't matter to that set.
Do you agree with them that Colorado's lost its luster?
In some ways, yes. In some ways, no. I think if it had lost its luster, why is Palantir exec dropping tens of millions of dollars on a home? Why are those things still in demand if we'd lost that luster? What I think has become difficult is for some of the things that separated Colorado out as such a wonderful outdoor recreation state, we are being priced out of the market if you're in the middle class. It is becoming a rich person's only game. And what I mean is think about how much it costs to go skiing right now. You want to go snowmobiling? What's that going to cost? In the summer, what's it cost to grab that mountain bike and head out on some of the trails? Some of those things are being priced out of what the average person can afford. So I think that's part of why Colorado has lost its luster. 30 years ago, if you were a middle-class person in Colorado, you will go skiing several times a year. Now, if you're middle class in Colorado,
you don't ski at all.
You don't ski at all,
Yep.
and that's the change.
Let's
It's
go
totally changed.
to the phone lines here. Paul, Colorado Springs. Good morning, Paul. You're on with Jeff and Bill.
Good morning. What's on your mind?
Good morning, guys. This drives me nuts because it seems like such a simple plan. If you take the states that are doing very well, what do they have in common that Colorado could do real easy? Number one is to bring back these corporations, fix their schools. Make the schools where they want to come back. Number two is cut the state tax. Cut the state tax because these corporations will pay for that, and it'll bring in more tourists to pay for our state tax.
Got a question about that, Paul. Got a question. I understand the idea of the cutting the state taxes and saying the corporation and paying the taxes. Isn't it the corporation's job to try to pay as little tax as possible? And in the case of Palantir, they have high-priced lawyers to try and lower their tax bill to zero if they can get to it. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying that lamenting sometimes the large corporations leaving, they're not trying to pay our taxes anyway.
Well, I got a great answer for that. They're leaving because of all the taxes, the schools, the crime. If you make Colorado a no-crime state, which is real simple, if you do these hardcore crimes, you're out. You either got to leave or you've got to go to prison. The other thing is, I worked 18 years for one of the most powerful men in this country. And, when they cut his state taxes, when Donald Trump came in office, the first thing he did was he took the 32,000 employees that he had, he gave them all a 4% raise, and he gave them all a bonus. And they were the highest paid
Those
employees.
business leaders invest back
we gotta
in
run,
the
Paul. Thanks for the
community.
call.
They do. Absolutely. Paul, you're exactly right. Colorado Springs, we're on a bad trajectory. This is just another example. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show, 710 KNUS in Denver.
And the answer in Colorado Springs.